Hi everyone, this is Mela from Mela Reads. How are you going? I did want to do a little bit of a mention. I'm in Melbourne, Victoria. So we are back in restrictions after like a week and a half of easing restrictions. We're back in them. Just wanted to say wherever you are, whatever your COVID situation is, hope you're doing okay. Hope reading and maybe even booktube are giving you a bit of comfort and connection. And I would certainly during this time really enjoy making some extra connections. So if you watch this, please say hi. I would love to hear from you. And in particular, right now I'm interested in talking to you about Mexican Gothic. This is quite a new novel. I think last year it came out, and it's written by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, who is, I believe, Canadian Mexican woman. And this cover is gorgeous. Like, if you haven't seen this out and about, how could I not pick this up? I discovered this by just sort of trolling through my library catalog looking for books about women. It's certainly about a woman. Her name is Noemi. She is a socialite in Mexico City in the 1950s, and she's the protagonist of what kind of is, as this story says, a Gothic novel set in Mexico in that time period. So that sounded fun, and I thought I would pick it up. Something I'm interested in is retellings of classic stories, or how we adapt stories that already exist into ways that are new and interesting, and reach new audiences through their relevancy. And I guess this gave me a lot more of that than I was expecting. So this is part of my period of exploring Gothic fiction in general, and I'm really enjoying it. I came across something, while this was on my TBR, I came across something about a book by Daphne du Maurier called My Cousin Rachel, which was published in 1951. You may have heard of Daphne du Maurier as the person who wrote Rebecca, and also she wrote the story The Birds that Alfred Hitchcock's movie was based on. So she was writing, you know, around mid-century, mid-20th century Gothic horror stories. And can I just say, I'm so glad that I discovered her and was sort of led to picking her up through this. So I heard the premise of My Cousin Rachel and it sounded super similar to Mexican Gothic. So I thought, on the chance that Mexican Gothic was inspired by it, or a derivative story of it, or fan fiction to it in some way, I would read it first. And I listened to the audiobook while I was going for walks, because that's nearly the only way we've been able to go outside lately. And look, I found it a bit slow, and I was really glad I stuck with it, because the story unravels piece by piece. And I'm just going to pop the word spoiler down below in a moment if you don't want to hear the ending. But can I just say, I highly recommend this book if you like a slow burn, if you like a mystery, and if you like characters that you can't quite place or read. The spoiler part is, please talk to me if you've read this book, or go and read it and come and talk to me. The ending blew my mind. I cannot stop thinking about it, like weeks and weeks later, books later, because I can't tell not only if Rachel was guilty, but if she was guilty intentionally, or if she was manipulated into it, or if she was accidentally guilty. I can't tell how much agency she had. I can't tell if she was mentally ill and unaware of the fact that she was playing people, or if she was genuine and it was all just freaky coincidence. And the last scene of the book, where she dies and we never know the answers, just keeps popping back up into my head. And there's so many things dropped through the story that could point to any of these possible outcomes. And I mentioned in my review for Where the Crawdads Sing that I really disliked that it was packaged up neatly at the end. And this was like the complete opposite. It was, if not the next, like nearly the next thing I read. And I just really enjoyed the fact that at the end of it, the story stayed with me, because there was still more of it in my mental life, more of it to work with. And I think that's great. I want a book to leave me wanting more, not being like, that's done, see you later. Like, I want it to give me something to work with and to take forward with me. So I'm super pleased that I read that. The other thing I happened to come across a review after I'd read Mexican Gothic by Murphy Napier, who's one of my favourite booktubers. She mentioned in her review on Goodreads that it was heavily influenced by the short story The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. That was published in 1892, and I hadn't read it. Short story, but right, so I found it on like Project Gutenberg or something like that, and I just read it one day, sat outside in the sunshine, it was a nice day, and smashed it out. And I highly recommend that as well. For that time period, late 19th century, a woman describing a situation where she's essentially bedridden in a room with yellow wallpaper, as you might have guessed, and her psychological progress or decline, depending on how you read it, while she's in that room looking at the yellow wallpaper. It is, and I mean, short stories can be like this, just so masterful, the way things evolve through a very short period of text, and it just really gets down to that essential experience of the woman. And it can certainly see that it may have inspired Mexican Gothic, because Noemi's wallpaper is a bit disturbing, similarly. I was really pleased that whether or not this was influenced by My Cousin Rachel, it's not at all a rip-off. It veers off into very different pathways once you get into it. This was a super easy read for me. I've been reading classics and I tore through this like in 3 sessions, and I was really glad for that, for it being an easy read. I think if you don't know the premise, it is that Noemi receives a letter via her father from her cousin, who's newly married off and living with her husband that the family barely knows, in like this dilapidated old mansion out in country Mexico somewhere. And she sends a letter saying, come and help me because I'm being poisoned, or something like that. Similar setup to My Cousin Rachel. Noemi's father sends her, and I'm gonna say the setup felt a little forced and I did not enjoy that. It's like, so the letter went to Noemi's father, not Noemi, just so that he could hold over her head the fact that he wants her to go and be the one to deal with this. And it was like, the possibility of her going to university is the offer that's made. That's sort of never really revisited. And then from when Naomi gets out to the mansion, there's foreshadowing very quickly about what is going on. That said, it's sort of the last third. There is a big reveal. And then there was like one thing that I was hanging on to, was like, okay, I feel like we've had the reveal a little bit soon. I'm a bit disappointed about that. Because like, where do we go from here? But then there was another reveal very close to the end. And you're like, oh, that's that thing. I was like, where does that fit in? Okay, that's fine. The last like 20 to 50 pages are super action-packed, which is not at all like what I'm used to reading. And it's also not all what I associate with Gothic fiction. But you know what, Noemi, and I can see why people like this, she's pretty likable, she's feisty, she's smart, she's like, in a way, loyal to her family, but she's also motivated by self-interest. Like, her dad's made her that offer that she can go to university if she succeeds in sorting this situation out. It really bugged me that she spent like no time with her cousin that she'd gone there to try and rescue. She spent more time just like walking around the cemetery and chatting to Francis, and we are going to get to Francis, don't worry. And again, you'll discover that very early on. I think there is... Oh yeah, in terms of influences, I believe Rebecca, also by Daphne du Maurier, is cited as very influential on this, or very similar, but I haven't read that yet. It's on my list, but I want to read Jane Eyre first because, again, that's influential on Rebecca, whether credited or acknowledged or anything like that. And I think this comes back to this idea that there's only so many stories that we can tell, but the way we do it, the unique perspectives we bring to them, is what makes them interesting and makes us keep reading new stories. And I don't think it's a problem that this pulls from existing texts, because whether you mean to or not, you were going to when you were writing. And I think that Moreno-Garcia has definitely gone into some interesting territory here by placing it in an unusual setting. Gothic fiction set in Mexico, as it says in the title. That is where I take one issue with this book though, because I didn't feel like it was very Mexican. And I'm going to link in my description to a YouTube review by Isabel's Digest. She is Mexican, and she definitely was able to expand on my general feeling around this in that video, so go check it out if you'd like to hear a Mexican woman talk about this instead of this white Aussie girl. But basically, it felt like it could be set anywhere. The Mexicanness wasn't a very salient feature, and as Isabel points out, it was a real missed opportunity to include some of the sort of Mexican folklore and the mysticism that exists in that culture, which would have really enriched this and made it, like, I think, for me, possibly a much more enjoyable, interesting read. But, you know, that's one thing. Another thing that I didn't particularly love about this was, you know, straight up it says it's a feminist reimagining of Gothic fantasy. I knew from the fact that it was a feminist reimagining that Noemi was gonna get out of there okay, and presumably her cousin Catalina as well. And so I wasn't that invested in their well-being, because I trusted that it being feminist, they wouldn't be killed off, and that sort of, yeah, takes away some of the experience as well. I feel like we're going all over the shop in this review, but this is the way my brain goes. So another thing is, oh yeah, there were for sure some vampire vibes I got early on. There's mention of the family bringing soil over from England to Mexico, so the antagonist family are white people. Anyway, the bringing of the soil gave me some real vampire vibes. I also got this idea that Virgil, Catalina's husband, was a Byronic hero, or some sort of send-up of a Byronic hero, and he later, after I made a note of this, he basically says that he thinks Catalina fell for him because she saw in him this tragic hero, like from the romances and the Gothic books she read and adored, including like Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre. And even in Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff makes fun of himself, or he makes fun of, what's her name, that marries him, because she saw in him a tragic hero. And these men are not that, but they will use that image and the power it holds over women to bring those women in for their own purposes. And that's pretty messed up. That's a Byronic hero. They ain't lovely. So there's that. And obviously, yeah, the fact that the white men are the antagonists. I'm gonna put up spoilers again, and we're gonna go into some stuff now. So one thing with the white men being evil, I kind of like the idea that they would have been evil anyway, but the magic or the fungus or whatever were a way for them to achieve their ends that they would have had anyway. They would have found ways to work towards that, you know, manipulation and power seeking and all of that sort of thing, regardless. Secondary to that, why does everybody stand Francis? Francis is like the black sheep in the white family, that he's kind of kinder to Noemi. He sort of helps Noemi and, you know, ends up being a romantic interest, which I did not feel was necessary at all for the story. Like, you know what, she saved her cousin from certain doom and death. That wasn't enough. She had to get a kiss from a man at the end. Ugh. Anyway, I love romance, but I just didn't think it needed to be a feature of this story. But Francis not only admits to Noemi that he was a coward because he didn't tell her to get out of High Place, the manor, while she had the chance, he never even acknowledges that he never tried to help Catalina get out of there or avoid coming there. And I feel like the only reason he helped Noemi in the end, in his own words, like he would follow her anywhere, he falls in love with her, so he wants to help her. It's not necessarily just that he has a really strong value about what they're doing is wrong and monstrous and he doesn't want a part of it. It's that, you know, this spunky, attractive woman's come into his life and he wants to be better for her. And I don't know, we should want to be better for ourselves, first and foremost. So, Francis, a little bit to me. I like the fact that he was really into fungus and other flora, and he did the beautiful artworks of them, the spore prints and stuff. That's super cool, and probably one of the more well-developed character aspects in the book. But yeah, I don't think he was as pure as people like to make out. Just lacked a bit of a backbone, unfortunately. What if I not discussed that I would like to discuss? Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a couple more things. So one thing is that there is a Spotify playlist that Silvia Moreno-Garcia, she links it in on Goodreads. So that's how I found that. And I was listening to the Spotify playlist while I was reading in a couple of my sessions, and I quite enjoyed that. So if you haven't read it yet, or even if you think you like the vibe of that playlist, go check it out. And then, yeah, let's talk about the sexual imagery. I don't think I expected this book to have sex scenes, and it doesn't quite, but it also definitely does. And I know other reviewers have done like a trigger warning for non-consent if that's something that's hard for you to read. That is definitely the context within which this happens. That said, I don't know if I feel it was superfluous. I think it shows some of I'm gonna say, because I'm out of the spoiler section now, it shows some of the ways in which the evil could manifest. I get it for that. And also towards the end, Noemi's drawing parallels to something that Francis told her about cicadas, that even when they're infected by a mold that's literally killing them from within, they will still try to reproduce. And it's just like that frantic desire to live and create life even as you die. Very interesting, and certainly ties into some of the other goings on in this book. So I think I'll leave it at that. So overall, I really enjoyed this book, and I am glad I picked it up. It was like a beautiful, refreshing read, and definitely maybe not quite what I hoped it to be. That said, I gave it 3 stars, just because I can see the potential, what Moreno-Garcia was trying to do, and what she did do. It's pretty cool, it's pretty different, but yeah, just kind of let me down in a couple of ways. I don't know if this will stand the test of time. Like, I've been reading all these classics, and it's really interesting to read something contemporary and wonder where this fits into the pitch or the conversation. And in 150 years, will people mention this instead of Wuthering Heights as a key Gothic text? I don't think so. Happy to be proven wrong, though. Actually, just to double back on my point about it not being Mexican enough, I think it's a little bit sad that people are reading this for representation of Mexicans or Latin folk in general, because of the lack of Mexicanness really in this. I think we can do better. So if you know something better, let me know. For sure, I'll pick it up. If you know something that does go into like the occult or mystical sort of aspects of Mexican culture in a Gothic or fantastical way, that sort of magic realism, something like that, I would be super interested. So let me know. And apart from that, I think I'm gonna leave it. I hope you enjoyed my zombie bride old Halloween outfit thingy I pulled out. and my sort of spooky vibes while I discussed these two stories. And it's been lovely to chat to you. Like I said, I hope you're taking care, and please reach out, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!